I never believed in aliens. Not the little green men, not the flying saucers, not the conspiracy theories about Area 51. I always thought it was all just a bunch of nonsense, until it happened here, until it happened to us. It started with the lights. I remember the first night I saw them. I was sitting on my porch, sipping a cup of coffee, watching the stars. The sky was clear, and the town of Black Hollow was quiet, like it always was. We're a small town, tucked away in the middle of nowhere, population 1,200 if you count the stray dogs. Nothing ever happens here, or at least it didn't used to. The lights appeared out of nowhere, bright, pulsating orbs that hovered just above the tree line. They moved in patterns, too deliberate to be natural, too strange to be man-made. I froze, my coffee cup halfway to my lips, as I watched them dance across the sky. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. Maybe I'd had too much caffeine. Maybe I was tired. But then I heard the hum. It was low at first, almost imperceptible, like the sound of a distant engine. But it grew louder, vibrating through the air, through the ground, through my bones. It wasn't just a sound, it was a feeling, a pressure in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I dropped my coffee cup and it shattered on the porch steps, but I barely noticed. My eyes were glued to the lights. And then, just as suddenly as they'd appeared, they were gone. The hum faded, the pressure lifted, and the night was silent again. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the spot where the lights had been, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. But there was no sense to be made. It was just wrong. I told myself it was nothing, a trick of the light maybe, or some kind of atmospheric phenomenon. But deep down I knew that wasn't true. Something had happened that night. Something had changed. The next morning, the town was different. It was subtle at first. People were quieter, more reserved. They moved with a strange mechanical precision, like marionettes on invisible strings. Their eyes were blank, their expressions empty. It was as if something had been drained out of them. Something vital, something human. I noticed it first with Mrs. Henderson, the old woman who lived across the street. She was out in her garden like she always was in the mornings, but she wasn't humming her usual tune. She wasn't talking to her flowers either. She just stood there, perfectly still, staring at nothing. When I called out to her, she didn't respond. She didn't even look at me. I tried to shake it off. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she was having a bad day. But as I walked through town, I saw the same thing everywhere I looked. The barista at the coffee shop didn't smile when she handed me my usual order. The mailman didn't wave as he passed by. Even the kids at the playground were silent, their laughter replaced by an eerie, unnatural stillness. By the end of the day, I was starting to panic. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. But I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to fix it. And then, that night, I found out the truth. I was in my kitchen trying to distract myself with a book when I heard the noise. It was coming from outside, a soft, wet sound, like something slithering through the grass. I grabbed a flashlight and went to investigate, my heart pounding in my chest. I told myself it was probably just a raccoon or a stray cat, but I knew better. I knew it was something else. I found it in my backyard, just beyond the tree line. At first, I thought it was a snake, a big one, maybe 6 feet long, with a thick, glistening body. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't a snake. It wasn't anything I'd ever seen before. Its skin was translucent, like jelly, and I could see its insides pulsing and writhing as it moved. It had no eyes, no mouth, no discernible features, just a long, segmented body that tapered to a point at one end. And it was changing. As I watched, its body shifted and morphed, growing appendages that looked like legs, then arms, then something that resembled a human face. I stumbled back, my flashlight slipping from my hand, and the thing turned toward me. It didn't have eyes, but I could feel it looking at me, studying me. And then it moved. It was fast, faster than anything that size had any right to be. It lunged at me, its body stretching and contorting as it closed the distance between us. I screamed and threw myself to the side, barely avoiding its grasp. I scrambled to my feet and ran, not looking back, not stopping until I was inside with the door locked behind me. I spent the rest of the night huddled in my bedroom, clutching a baseball bat and listening for any sign that the thing was still out there. But the night was silent, and by morning, I almost convinced myself that it had all been a nightmare. Almost, because when I went outside, I found the evidence. The grass where the thing had been was flattened, and there were strange, oily marks on the ground. And then there was the smell, a sweet, sickly odour that clung to the air and made my stomach churn. I didn't know what to do. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? That I'd seen some kind of alien creature in my backyard? They'd think I was crazy. And even if they believed me, what could they do? I didn't even know what I was dealing with. So I kept it to myself. I watched and waited, hoping that whatever was happening would pass. But it didn't. It only got worse. Over the next few days, the town continued to change. People stopped going to work. They stopped talking to each other. They just existed, moving through their days like sleepwalkers, their eyes empty and their faces blank. It was like they'd been hollowed out, their personalities, their emotions, their very souls stripped away. And then there were the disappearances. It started with Mr. Thompson, the town's mechanic. He didn't show up to open his shop one morning, and when someone went to check on him, he was gone. His house was empty, his car still in the driveway. There was no sign of a struggle, no indication that he'd left willingly. He was just gone. Then it was the Jenkins family, then the Millers, then half the town. People vanished overnight, leaving behind empty homes and unanswered questions. The police tried to investigate, but they were just as affected as everyone else. They went through the motions, filing reports and asking questions, but there was no urgency, no emotion. It was like they didn't even care. I did care. I cared enough to be terrified because I knew what was happening. I'd seen the thing in my backyard, and I'd seen the way it had looked at me. It wasn't just a creature, it was a parasite, and it was spreading. I tried to leave. I packed a bag, got in my car, and headed for the edge of town. But when I reached the town limits, I found the road blocked. Not by a barricade or a police car, but by people. Dozens of them, standing shoulder to shoulder, their faces blank and their eyes empty. They didn't move, didn't speak. They just stood there watching me. I turned around and tried another road, but it was the same story. Every way out of town was blocked. I was trapped. That night, I barricaded myself in my house. I locked the doors, closed the curtains, and tried to pretend that everything was normal. But I knew it wasn't. I knew I wasn't safe, and I was right. I woke up to the sound of scratching at my window. At first I thought it was a tree branch, but then I heard the hum, the same low vibrating hum I'd heard the night the lights appeared. My heart raced as I crept to the window and peeked through the curtains. It was there, on the other side of the glass, the thing from the backyard. Its body was pressed against the window, its translucent skin pulsing and writhing as it tried to find a way in. And then it saw me. Its body shifted, forming something that resembled a face, a grotesque, twisted mockery of a human face. It smiled at me, and I felt a wave of nausea as I realized what it was doing. It was mimicking me. It was learning. I backed away from the window, my mind racing. I needed a plan. I needed a way to fight back. But before I could think of anything, the window shattered. The thing slithered in, its body moving with unnatural speed. I grabbed the baseball bat and swung at it, but it dodged easily, its body twisting and contorting in ways that defied logic. It lunged at me, and I felt its cold, slimy skin brush against my arm. I screamed and swung again, this time connecting with a sickening squelch. It recoiled, its body writhing in pain, and I took the opportunity to run. I bolted out of the house and into the night, not caring where I was going, just knowing that I had to get away. But there was nowhere to go. The town was empty, the streets silent. The only sound was the hum, growing louder and louder, until it felt like it was inside my head. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing in the middle of the road, gasping for breath. And then I saw them. They were everywhere, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, their translucent bodies glowing faintly in the moonlight. They moved as one, a writhing, pulsating mass that filled the streets, the buildings, the entire town. And at the center of it all was something else, something huge, something monstrous. It was like a hive, a massive pulsating structure made of the same translucent material as the creatures. It pulsed and throbbed, sending out waves of the same oily substance I'd seen in my backyard. And all around it, the people of Black Hollow stood, their eyes blank, their bodies still. I realized then that it was too late. The parasite had won. It had taken over the town, turning everyone into drones, into hosts for its offspring. And I was the only one left. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the hive, feeling the hum vibrating through my body. I don't know how I found the strength to get up, to keep moving. But I did. I had to. I'm writing this now as a warning. If you're reading this, if you found this journal, then you need to know the truth. The parasite is real. It's here. And it's spreading. I can feel it inside me now, burrowing into my mind, my body, my soul. It's changing me, hollowing me out, turning me into one of them. I don't have much time left. But before it takes me completely, I need to tell you this. Don't come looking for Black Hollow. Don't try to save us. It's too late for us, but it's not too late for you. Run, hide. Do whatever you have to do to stay alive. Because if you don't, you'll end up like me. You'll end up hollow.